There's an old hypothetical question. Imagine you're stranded on an island and you're allowed to bring one person with you. Now, imagine this, but in a much more grander ocean and a much more smaller island. Guys, you're stranded on a starship and you're 100 years away from the next planet and nearly 100 years away from Earth. So you're really stranded in this cosmic sea, but you're allowed to bring one person with you. And this one person you stumble upon happens to be one of the most beautiful women you've ever seen. Are you going to bring her with you? The answer is probably yes. You're going to be like, I can either be alone and die on this thing by myself, or I can be on this stranded starship with the hottest woman ever. I think I'm going to bring her. So ladies, I'm sorry, but from your perspective now, you've been stranded on this cosmic island with another stranger. How are you going to feel about that? Obviously, you're probably going to be pretty pissed, especially if the guy is not the greatest looking. If it's a guy that looks like me, it's probably not going to be a prize. If you're struck there with Chris Pratt, it's probably going to be an A-OK day. But also take into consideration that eventually you find out this stranded starship, this ghost ship that you're both stuck on, is also doomed to hit an iceberg in space. It's going to Titanic eventually. It's going to have the same fate as Titanic. But there's an opportunity for you and this other stranded stranger to save the ship, and you'll both live happily ever after. I guess with that context in mind, how much more pissed are you going to be? Are you going to be a little less pissed, or are you still going to be like, I would have rather died? Anyways, that's the situation we're dealing with in the 2016 film Passengers, starring Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt. I want to plug in this one line of dialogue from the film that I believe is probably the most important part of the film. It kind of defines the entire story, the entire point of the story. And it is, funnily enough, from the NPC android bartender, Arthur, when he tells Jim,
"You're not where you want to be. You feel like you're supposed to be somewhere else."
You said it.
Well, say you could snap your fingers and be wherever you wanted to be. I bet you'd still feel this way. Point is, you can't get so hung up on where you'd rather be that you forget how to make the most of where you are.
What are you telling me?
Take a break from worrying about what you can't control. Live a little.
Live a little.
and that one line kind of just applies to all of us, me, you, whoever's watching this video. No matter where you are in life, a lot of us are in situations where we really don't want to be in. But you also need to look for the silver lining. You've got to make the most of where you are. Otherwise, you're just going to be miserable. Life hands us all a very bad deck. Most of us are not going to be in the position we would imagine ourselves or desire ourselves to be in. But you have to find the things that are working and appreciate them. So the genre of the story is this cosmic sci-fi adventure story. The themes it deals with is romance and survival. And for the romance part, it's kind of that old saying, you're at the right place at the wrong time.
You get to fly to another planet, but you'll die along the way. And you find the perfect woman right in front of you, yet she's completely out of reach.
This is an extreme version of that. Can you imagine, for guys, you meet the most beautiful woman ever, but you're stranded on this starship. So it really is just a situation of the perfect circumstance in an imperfect time. So now that we have our theme and our genre, we need to create a conflict with these two things. In Passengers, Jim, and later joined by Aurora, are in conflict with this ship that is destined for doom. Not just for them, but for everyone else that's on board this ship. There's thousands of people here. They're also battling their own personal choices. For Jim, the conflict was for whether he has to awaken Aurora or not, knowing the consequences of awakening her a century before they reach their destination. And for Aurora, it is, after given an opportunity to return, do I return or do I stay with Jim? Okay, so now we're going to get into the 3-act story structure. Very simple to understand, beginning, middle, end. Act 1, 2, 3. Most of you already know this. If you want to use any of the tools that I'm about to use in this video to help write your own cosmic story or manga, comic, whatever it is you're trying to write, if you have a story in mind, you can use any of these tools, which are available for free in the link in the description down below. There are multiple formats and different variations of these tools, so go ahead and take advantage of those. And if you want more context about these tools and how to use them, you can get my book, Absolute Cinema Storytelling Techniques, and it will give you more context about the structure of story, the psychology of things to consider with characters, and all kinds of other things. Now, let's get into the 3-act structure. So what I like to do is I like to simplify the 3 acts as much as possible to keep me on track when I'm actually writing my full story. So the exposition. Exposition here is that we see a comet collide with the ship, it gets through its force fields, and that's what causes the malfunctioning hibernation pod for Jim. This is what causes him to wake up a century too early. I guess the bright side is that it is a luxury starship, so it's not like he's on some rinky-dink ship. There is a little bit of comfort to be had. So the only thing you can really do is explore the ship. Now the inciting incident here. Jim, after a period of time, eventually discovers Aurora and learns about her through her vlog profile. After a year of being isolated on the ship, he's desperate for companionship. And so he makes an extreme choice to awaken Aurora to join him on this stranded ghost ship. In doing this, he knows he's dooming her to the same fate as him. Now, what is the rising action? Jim and Aurora bond. Their romance gets hot and heavy, real steamy. Jim's a lucky guy. Things aren't so bad now, are they? Actually, yes they are, because eventually there's some trouble in paradise when Aurora discovers the secret of Jim's actions. She finds out that he is responsible for her awakening from her pod. Now let's get into the climax. The starship is in full crisis mode. Even though Aurora has her problems with Jim, they must work together in order to save the ship, because it's not just them at this point. There are 5,000 other passengers whose lives are now at stake. Alright, so now we get to our falling action here. The ship is stabilized. The mission is successful. Jim and Aurora have saved the day. Now, after saving the ship, Jim repairs one of the hibernation pods and allows Aurora an opportunity to return to deep sleep. And ultimately, in the resolution, Aurora chooses to stay with Jim. So that is how I would simplify the story of Passengers as much as possible. You can add a lot more details in this section here, but if you just want a general direction of where the story is going to go in each act, you could simplify it in this way so that at least when you're writing, you won't lose track of where your story is supposed to go. Now, before we get into the next tool, which is called the story circle structure, I do want to give you guys a brief breakdown of what the story circle structure is, just so it's easier for you to follow along once I start dissecting the story circle structure for the different characters and a few scenes. This is the KC story circle structure. There are 8 steps in this process. A character has a desire. However, there is a complication which causes him to react. The character makes progress until the complication becomes a bigger problem that forces him to take extreme action, influenced by the change that he has made through the journey. Okay, before we get into the actual story circle structure, just to give you a little more context as to Jim's situation to understand his actions, there is one particular scene where another crew member joins them very briefly, one of the deck chiefs. His name was Gus, I believe. And in his brief awakening, he explains to Aurora, he gives her more context as to why Jim chose the actions that he did when he compares Jim to a drowning man.
He took away my life.
I know, and I'm sorry. There's work
It's murder.
You're right, Aurora. But the drowning man will always try and drag somebody down with him. It ain't right, but the man's drowning.
Alright, so here we are with Jim, our drowning man. Jim is a mechanical engineer. First step of the pie here, introduce our character. He's been awakened nearly a century too early from the ship's original destination. What is Jim's desire? Now, Jim originally, his desire was to have a fresh start on Homestead 2. He explains to Aurora how he felt on Earth and why a new planet would offer new opportunities.
Why did you give up your life on Earth?
Well, I could ask you the same thing.
But it's my interview. Were you running away from something?
No. Everything was okay.
So?
I guess I just wanted a new world. I don't know, a fresh start.
That's Homestead Company advertising.
Back on Earth, when something breaks, you don't fix it, you replace it. One of the colonies, they have problems to solve. They're my kind of problems. Open country. Room to grow.
Now you're back to slogans.
Can't slogans be true?
But there is a problem. His premature awakening creates a shift in his desire. Now he really just seeks to not die alone. He just doesn't want to die in this void in space. And he's trying to keep his sanity. His new desire is keeping sanity and having a companion, really. Because eventually when he meets Arthur the bartender, it's not quite the companionship that would fulfill human companionship. Alright, so what's the complication here for Jim? Jim obviously is stuck on a malfunctioning ship. He's completely isolated. Like I said, he's stranded on this island by himself. He's surrounded by people, but they're all in perfect hibernation. Nothing's wrong with anyone else's hibernation pods except for Jim. And he's a century away from his planned destination. So in Slice 4 here, how does Jim react? Well, he first explores the ship. As he's exploring this ship, he discovers the severity of his situation. He also gets to a point where he contemplates suicide. You gotta think about it. You're lonely on this ship. You've learned that you're gonna die alone. This is a difficult choice that he has to make. However, he eventually meets Aurora, the sleeping beauty of the ship. Things don't look so bad now. Can you imagine that? Like, for guys, it's a lot more easier to understand. If you're stuck alone and you're about to die, but then you see the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, you might start to think, this might not be so bad. I could not be so alone anymore. Now, the progress here, after he reacts to his complication, he awakens Aurora and builds a real relationship with her. The daily life has become less tragic. But anytime someone starts to make progress in a story, there always has to be a problem. The story would just end right there if it just woke her up and then it was just happily ever after. So you have to thicken the plot a little bit. And here is where we get to our 6th step, the problem. Now, the problem is that the betrayal becomes destroyed because Aurora discovers what Jim did, how she came to be. So to her, it was an authentic situation until she finds out Jim's dirty little secret. But no matter how she feels about it, no matter how Jim feels about it, no matter how anybody would have felt about it, the ship was destined for destruction. The malfunctions escalate into a more dramatic scale. So they must take action. Jim decides he's going to risk everything to save the ship. And now he has the help from Aurora, who eventually comes to understand that no matter what Jim did, someone was going to have to do something to repair this ship. So Jim nearly dies trying to save the ship. And after saving the ship, he even repairs one of the medical bays to transform it into a hibernation pod so that Aurora could have an opportunity to return into deep sleep and make it to Homestead 2. But due to his actions, there was a lot of change happening here, and Jim has accepted his fate, obviously, because he decided to repair the hibernation pod for Aurora and spend the rest of his life on the ship knowing that this is where he was going to die. He's at peace with it now. However, through his actions, Aurora decides to stay with Jim, and this redemptive change for him pays off. So that's how I would simplify Jim's story here. Now, before I get into Aurora's story circle structure, I always talk about how the story circle structure tool itself can be used to structure the entire story. It can be used to structure an individual act in the story, and it can be used to structure each individual scene in the story. Usually here, you just see me doing the characters, the story circle structure for the characters, because it is also applicable to the characters. But I wanted to do 2 scenes in particular. These scenes happen back to back, one after the other. And I thought these were actually scenes that are so simple, but it also provides an opportunity to show how you could take a scene and construct it with the story circle structure so that your scenes have momentum that carry from one scene to the next. And it gives your story momentum. It helps it feel like it's flowing seamlessly. So let's take a look at these 2 scenes and their story circle structures. So we're here again with our drowning man, Jim. First step of the process is to introduce our character. We are introduced to Jim again. This time, he is entering the futuristic planetarium. The desire. What is his desire in this scene? His desire is to understand exactly how bad his situation is and to find some kind of solution.
Right? And where are we?
We're in transit from Earth to Homestead 2. We will arrive in approximately 90 years.
What?
We arrive at Homestead 2 in 90 years, 3 weeks, and 1 day.
Wait.
Now, what is the complication here? Step 3. The system reveals that the ship is a century away from where he's supposed to wake up. Now, how does Jim react to this information? Step 4. He, due to the map that is presented to him, takes in the information, which 5, the progress, gives him a more better understanding of the situation. He gets more concrete evidence. So this creates a problem for him. The information creates a panic. Just imagine you found out, I'm 100 years away from the destination. How do I get back to sleep? But because he can't figure it out yet, he has to take action. And the action he takes is he finds a room in the ship that allows him to send a message back to Earth, which is his call for help. However, he discovers that the message is going to take decades to get to Earth and a few more decades to get back to him.
Thank you.
Message sent.
Outstanding.
Message will arrive in 19 years.
Wait, what?
Earliest reply in 55 years.
55 years.
so sending a message isn't going to really get him immediate help. He's going to be an old man by the time he receives a response. And so the change here is that the hopelessness sets in. He is really feeling the severity, the doom. And so that's how you would construct just that individual scene with the story circle structure. Now, for the next scene that I wanted to break down, we are introduced to a new character, which is Arthur. So let's go ahead and take a look. Here, I'm going to use a picture for Arthur, even though this scene really is still about Jim. So now again, first step, who is our character? Character is Jim again, but this time featuring the android bartender Arthur. The desire here is the same as in the previous scene. He wants to understand how bad his situation is, but now that he has Arthur, it might be a little bit easier because he can ask it more questions directly. So the complication is, first, when he meets Arthur, he thinks he's a person, but upon taking a better look over the edge of the bar, he realizes that Arthur is an android.
What can I get for you?
What?
You look like a whiskey man.
Okay. Oh, you're a robot.
Android, technically.
How does he react to this information? He questions Arthur further because he knows more about the ship. The progress is the same as in the previous scene, where Arthur kind of confirms Jim's concerns. And we do get a little funny scene where Arthur has a little glitch upon Jim's questioning.
How long until we get to Homestead 2?
About 90 years or so.
And when are all the passengers supposed to wake up?
Not till the last 4 months.
How is it that I'm sitting here with you? With 90 years to go.
It's not possible for you to be here.
So the problem here comes from the answer provided by Arthur. It kind of seems even more hopeless now. However, the action taken in this scene is actually by Arthur when he hits him with that incredible one line of, make the most of where you are.
Point is, you can't get so hung up on where you'd rather be that you forget how to make the most of where you are.
And the change here comes from Jim and takes Arthur's advice to take advantage of the luxury that is offered by the starship. And so that's how you would simplify that scene using the story circle structure. Again, so the point of that was to share that, at least, was to show you guys that it is possible to use this tool for many parts of the story. Another thing you need to take into consideration when you're writing these different scenes is Mamet's 3 questions. Who wants what from who? What happens if they don't get it? Why now? So in the scene, Jim's specific goal is to question Arthur, probe him for answers about the malfunctioning starship without revealing any kind of panic. Now, what does Jim want in this scene? He just wants confirmation. Something's wrong, he knows it, and he just wants some practical help. And he also wants to be validated that he's not imagining what's happening is happening. Now, what's in his way of getting the answers that he wants, that he needs, is Arthur's literal programming. It's the corporate everything is fine protocols that are programmed into Arthur's responses. Now, what happens if he doesn't get the answers that he needs? Well, then he just stays trapped in this state of despair. So just think about these questions. Who wants what from who? What happens if they don't get it? And why now? When you're creating a scene so that there's a purpose to the scene and it can also help the narrative go into a more dramatic direction. Okay, so let's get into the final story circle structure here, and that is Aurora's. Now, hopefully you guys aren't getting bored of my story circle structures. I am going to go through this one as fast as possible because it's actually not too complicated. But all right, so here we are, Aurora. Who is Aurora? She is Sleeping Beauty. We also learn that she is an ambitious journalist. When we first meet her, she is in hibernation. Now, what is Aurora's desire? What does she want as a character? She will be the first person to document a colony journey from Earth to another planet and then return back to Earth to reveal the story to everyone back home. This is a journey that would take a few centuries just to accomplish, and she would have been the first person to have done it. Now, there's a complication here. What is her complication? Her complication is that, obviously, unlike Jim, she's awakened a century too early, but not by the ship, but by Jim. So how does she react right here? Obviously, unbeknownst to her, which she'll later find out, is that she'll bond with him because right now she thinks it's authentic. She falls in love with him and starts writing her own story. First, she starts writing about him, and then later when she finds out what he did, then she starts writing about what she did, what he did to her. The progress here, before she finds out all the chismes, the relationship feels real to her. I mean, technically it is real. The only thing that isn't real about it is how it came to be. She finds purpose and connection through the crisis that she shares with Jim here on this cosmic Titanic. But eventually we get to the problem here, which is when she discovers the truth of how she was awakened. And regardless of how she feels, the ship is going down no matter what. And this causes a different sense of urgency. She also discovers, through the help of what Gus tells her about Jim being a drowning man, that now she needs to choose between justice, survival, and romance. So what is the action she takes with this new information? Well, one, to survive, she must help Jim save the ship. And when offered to go back into hibernation, she decides to stay with Jim.
You'd be alone,
I've been alone before, and I'll be fine.
but I would never see you again.
I'll come and visit you.
And our final step here is change, which is her deciding to stay with Jim, her cosmic companion. So that is how you would simplify Aurora's story. Now, since this film is a cosmic journey, but is also a romance film, there's a love story going on. It's funny because I actually have in the book, Absolute Cinema Storytelling Techniques, I do have a short section on passengers in this book. So if you guys want to pick that up. Basically in the chapter I read about how if you're going to include a relationship in a story, whether the entire film is based on the relationship or whether the relationship is just an additional element of the story, the relationship should play a role in the narrative moving forward. It shouldn't just be because you have two good looking people and you want to see them together in the film. There should be some kind of narrative momentum that the relationship plays to help the story become thicker and feel like it moves the characters and influences what they do and what they want. So, if you've seen Passengers and it's a story that you enjoyed, I hope that this breakdown helps you enjoy it a little bit more. And if you have your own idea for a cosmic love story or a cosmic story or any story in general, it doesn't matter what kind of story you're trying to write. Remember, I do offer those free tools in the description down below. There are multiple formats of these tools, different variations of the tools. So whatever works for you, I hope you can take advantage of them and I hope it helps. If you want more context about the tools, they are available in my book and I'd appreciate it. If you picked one up, it helps support what I do. And also it just looks cool. It's like one of the coolest things I've ever made. So I appreciate you guys' time. If you're stuck on an island, who would you bring with you? Let me know in the comments down below. And thanks for tuning into this week's episode. I'll see you on the next one.